I am joined today by Mr. Paul. Hello.
Good morning, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. It's a new setup for my desk today, and it's a little bit throwing me out, but I'm fine. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I've just come back off annual leave actually on Monday, so we had 2 weeks off, so feel refreshed and ready to go again for the next season. So had a good time away, which
Awesome.
is fantastic.
I'm loving your bookcase behind you. I love books. I've just had my birthday little about a month ago, and I had loads and loads of books, and I'm so happy at the massive stack next to my bedside table.
Yeah, it's I've got a few on there, but yeah, it makes me look intelligent. I think when when I'm on a Teams or Zoom call. So, but I have read most of them to be fair.
Just get some John
But,
Stott ones that are facing out, and then everyone
yeah,
knows. If
yeah,
you've read
that's
those
right.
and you understand them, it's you must be all right.
Yeah.
We're going to get to a few different things in the next little while, but you work for Compassion UK. Now, Compassion UK, I think I've said this before, but a lot of people might have an understanding of the word compassion. We sort of know what we think that means, but just give us a bit of an overview about Compassion UK and what that is all about.
Okay, so Compassion UK is part of a wider organisation called Compassion International, which is based in Colorado Springs in the States. And so there's a number of countries, about 15 or 16 donor countries. We're one of them. And our focus is on releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. So our mission and focus as a ministry is to really engage in communities of severe poverty, which means that we're working with children and families that are literally surviving on less than $2 a day. So it's working with the poorest of the poor. And we, at the moment, have the privilege of working within 29 countries within Central and South America, Africa, and Asia and Indonesia. And our model of work really is to work with the local church. We really want to just come alongside the local church and enable the local churches within those communities to serve the children and their families to the best way that they can. And so in the 29 countries that we work in, we've got 8,500 what we call frontline church partners. So those churches all have a Compassion Child Development Centre. We have staff there that are all from the local church. And each country has a national office, which has a national director. So it's really those countries are leading the way in the direction of where they feel the most need is. Often in the West, we can go into spaces of poverty and think, oh, this would be good if we could help them here. But actually, we're about empowering and enabling the locals and the nationals. They understand their communities and their people far better than anyone else. And so really, we just want to be able to facilitate that through resource, through finance, to enable them to do the work and see children released from poverty and their families lifted out of poverty. And so that's kind of really what we do as an organization. Our distinctives, we're very much Christ-centered. It's about Jesus, it's about the gospel, it's about the church. And through the church, then really focusing and being church driven and being child focused. We know that the children are the most vulnerable within these communities. And we know if we can begin to reach out to children, give them the education that they deserve, give them nutritional food and medical care, then they have the chance of being lifted out of poverty. It's about giving them hope, giving them a future, and obviously them hearing the gospel and responding to Jesus.
I do remember in a church about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a group of folks went out to this country in Africa and they went and worked where one of the guys had been before. Let's go out and see the people. I've been here and all that. And they were doing some stuff. I think it was picking bananas and all that, sort of hard work as part of what they were doing. They were doing some missions work at night. But when they kept working, once the sun went down, the local said, "Why aren't you going home? Like all the other people who've come from around the world to help us, they just come, take some photos and leave." And this is their words. And they said, "Well, we're not here for the photo opportunity. We're here for the long haul help. We don't just want to come and look at us. We want to actually help you. And that means we work while you work." And I would imagine in a similar kind of vein, that's what Compassion UK is doing, because you're not just dropping in some, here's a pallet of food, off you go. Actually, it's that longer haul thing. It's that education, isn't it?
Yeah, it's long-term sustainable development. And so we really believe that, again, the nationals, the local people. It's about empowering them and resourcing them. And so our work very much is on giving the local church leaders the resources they need for them and their own people to be able to reach out into their community. And so even when we do interventions, so we engage in water interventions, there's some interventions that may involve training, child protection, or building toilet blocks or classrooms. We very much want to resource the local people to be able to do that. They have gifts, they have talents, they have abilities, they have the call of God on their lives. And so rather than people like ourselves going out and facilitating that for them, or taking a team over to build, a toilet block, we want to actually invest in their own economy and get local builders to do the work. And so it's very much about empowering and enabling them to do what they can. They're capable, but just they lack resource, really. So that's why the long-term sustainable impact is because we're empowering the locals to do that. And with one of our models within the ministry that we're working with the child sponsorship, for example, that is just giving a steady flow of finance, which really enables the church to serve the children and give them access to medicine, to school, to food, and to be part of a program which is really developing and discipling them through their childhood and teenage years. And so it's that long-term commitment to them as a child that sees them break the cycle of poverty. We know that the answer isn't overnight or in the short term. It's that long-term sustainable impact. And so the sponsorships that we encourage people to engage with, and we're grateful that we've got over 100,000 children at the minute sponsored through the generosity of Christians throughout the UK. That really is making such a transformational difference, because it's over years and over time that they're really being developed, and we've got that commitment to see them grow over that period of time. So we're seeing tremendous change, not just within children's lives, but the ripple effect into their families, into the church, into the communities, and we're seeing transformation happen within the countries that we have the privilege of working in.
One of the words you used was steady. That's that keep on going. It's that continual day after day, week after week, not just sort of carpet bombing help, which sometimes that's needed, but actually it's that longer term. And I also love the way you're talking about working with people on the ground. If you're employing a builder from the UK to fly over to, I don't know, wherever, then you've got to fly them over with all their equipment, and all of a sudden they're working in ways that aren't necessarily helpful where you are, because they can't just pop down to the local builder's merchant and get a bag of sand or cement. But if you're working in the country with a builder who's there, they know their own building approaches, they know the resources they can get, and all of a sudden it's a completely easier, I would imagine, this is me thinking, but it must be simpler just on that one part of it, of building something using somebody who's local.
Yeah, again, there's many different aspects that contribute to severe poverty, but one of them is a lack of jobs and resources within those communities. So if we can enable the locals to bring their skills and their experience to engage in the things that the community needs, then we're helping their economy, which ultimately helps them within the context of their poverty. And so that's one of the things we very much focus on, and with the way that we work, because Compassion partners with the local church, and we've got a child development centre there. All the finances that come and flow through our organisation, it doesn't get necessarily just, the money is not given to the local pastor in a sense. It goes through the project. It's all accounted for. So we're confident that the money that's given is going to the places that we're saying it's going to. It's going to be invested in the right things, and so all that is accounted for. throughout our organisation. And so we believe that then gives people confidence to be able to invest in some kind of way within the ministry and work of compassion in the global context, because we know that people are giving sacrificially to help and to serve the heart of God with the poor and the marginalised. And so we want to make sure we're being excellent stewards of the finances that are given. And so that gives us confidence that we know the money is being distributed in the right means.
Awesome. I just love when an organization talks about we want to work with a local church, whether that's UK working with local UK churches or UK working with somewhere in Sudan or Egypt or South America or wherever, people who work with other churches, that it just makes me so excited, having worked in churches in the past, because the local church often has people, like you say, with gifts and skills, but we kind of also need somebody who can come along and say, this is how we can open a door to this particular gift or this skill, and this is how we can use that gift and skill in this area, because sometimes it's very hard to see what you've got on your own doorstep. It maybe just takes a second set of eyes to open our eyes to what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we do, we've got a partnerships team here in the UK, and our work very much is connecting with local churches here in the UK and exploring partnership, so that we are able to be, a gateway, if you like, for local churches to engage in serving the poorest of the poor in a global context. Often people and churches want to give and want to serve in that way, but they're not sure how, and going through avenues that are trustworthy. And so when we're partnering with churches around the UK, we very much give them an opportunity to create a space for us to come and share about our work. People respond and sponsor children, but then also churches, they raise finance, or they may take a portion of their missions budget and invest that finance into a particular intervention that we're doing within the countries as well. So we really want to give churches an opportunity to engage with the heart of God for the poor in a global context, but without it taking their time and focus, in a sense, really from their local church and the work that God's called them to do within their own geographical community. And so I know I've been involved in global missions for many years, and when you're planning overseas trips and budgeting and working out all these different dynamics, all of that takes a lot of time and focus out of what we can be doing within our local missions. And so we really want to serve the church here in the UK in providing an opportunity to say, hey, you can engage in having a transformational impact, but without it taking too much time from what you're feeling God wants you to do within your own communities, and really empowering their church community to engage in those different initiatives and projects in reaching out to those that are in need and with the gospel within their towns, cities and villages, really. And so we feel that we're given an opportunity to have a transformational impact, and can serve in that way without it being too much, taking too much time and focus from them and their staff.
I love that approach to supporting with. But that is the thing, isn't it? Because Compassion's working with local churches here, near where you are based. Same nation, and yet it's the same mentality that you've got here in the UK as the churches you're serving. It's how can we equip and serve, and how can we help? I love that.
It is, absolutely. And really our heart is to enable the local church within these communities of severe poverty, through giving them the resources. So our holistic discipleship program, that every child, and currently we're serving 2.3 million children, across these countries. But that model is flexible and it's adaptable to every community and every child, because every community and child's reality of severe poverty is very, very different and unique. And so we can adapt that model, and each child will have a personal care worker that works with them in their development. And so we can take a unique approach, because it's not one size fits all. There's many different things in play when it comes to severe poverty and how that looks in communities and the reasons behind that. And so we want to be able to adapt that model into different contexts so that we're ensuring we're serving those children and their families in the best way possible and empowering the local church to do that. So when a child is sponsored, it's not like, I sponsor a child with my family. We're not the savior. We're not the hero in the story. We just have the privilege of playing our small part in serving these children. And so I know that the money that we give is just empowering the local church leader, their leadership, the Compassion Child Development Centre, and all the staff there, and the church community to serve these children. The child is part. Their community is very much, their family, their local church leader, the Child Development Centre, and the project they're part of. And we're part of that because we're able to give and write to the children that we sponsor if we want to do that. We encourage people to do that because we know that writing letters, the prayers and words of affirmation and encouragement make a huge difference into children's lives. We know that words have power. They have power to bring life or death, and those words of life that we can bring make a significant difference. And so we're just a part of the bigger picture of what God's doing in the lives of the children and the communities that they're a part of. And we know from independent research that over 75% of children that we work with, they go on to be to have a place in influential positions within leadership, whether it's within their local church, within something that they go on to do in terms of their career. But they are people of influence, which ultimately, you start multiplying that over the next, 10, 20, 30 years. You don't know how God's going to use each individual child to have an impact in their lives, within the lives of others. So that ripple effect and multiplication is something that we know God is very much in and using within the context of the children and families and churches that we have the privilege of working with.
Taking it back a little bit in time then, what was your journey into Compassion, and what's your background, and how did you find yourself one day turning up at an office thinking, I actually work for Compassion UK?
Yeah. I think for me, I think we can look back on our lives and pinpoint moments where we feel that the Holy Spirit just did something significant in our lives. And I remember when I was 16 years old, I was a naive teenager, and I went on my first local, short-term mission trip here in the UK to London. And it was very much back in the day where, you wore those hideous shell suits and you kind of did the open air outreach, and you did dance and drama and shared your story about how God had, transformed your life. And so we were doing this in Leicester Square. And, a particular guy caught my eye. He had a long green trench coat on and a top hat. And I went over and introduced myself. And his name was Clint, and he'd been on the streets for 25 years. And I just sat down, had a bit of a conversation with him. He came back the following day. I asked him if I could take him for lunch at Burger King. So he had a nice greasy burger, fries and a thick shake, and we just carried on talking. And I prayed with him, and he accepted Jesus into his life. And at the end of that day, we got together as a team, and someone said, hey, is there any kind of testimonies and stories from what God's done today? And Clint was standing alongside me and put his hand up. And he basically said, you got nothing to say, and he ignored him. And that broke me, really. But as I look back, I feel that moment was a moment where God really gave me a heart for the poor, the marginalized, and for mission. And so throughout, my 30 odd years involved in local churches, I've been youth pastoring, been doing missions, and that's been my background, really. And I've done a lot of overseas mission trips. But then 5 years ago, a friend of mine just reached out to me. I was in a season of transition, and he said, hey, there's a role going at Compassion UK. I think, the role would be a really good fit for you. So it was June 2019. I applied, was successful with the role. And I've just been, there just over 5 years now. So my role's evolved over the time, but work within partnerships. I'm a strategic development partnerships manager. And so very much involved in a team that working with and reaching out to local churches that currently partner with us, so we're looking to strengthen those partnerships, and then seeking new partnerships with local churches. And so we very much, email and call and try to meet with church leaders, their heart for mission and the local church and what God's put on their heart, share our heart and ministry, and just see if there's some alignment, and see if we can stand together in what God's doing across the world in terms of serving children in severe poverty. And so it's an absolute privilege to be able to do what I do. I love what the work that we do. I feel called to it, and what God's doing through the local church here in the UK as they seek to serve those children, and what he's doing within the countries that we're working is absolutely tremendous. And I've got the privilege, actually, a week on Sunday going out to Uganda for 7 days. We're doing a vision trip with some church leaders, just to let them go and see the work that we do and how it all works, and to get the opportunity to do that and see other churches around the UK come on board with us and stand together within this space is fantastic.
The thing that I'm picking up on from your story so far, you meet this guy, something amazing happens, and then something negative happens, but actually that, in a sense, bad thing, that kind of goes on to define in a good way the rest of your life. And I speak to so many people where this thing that we think, oh, this is terrible at the moment, in that moment, but actually God uses that in some way to trigger in us, or to empower us, or impassion us, and it sort of defines the rest of our life. So I love how, as a 16-year-old, you're having a conversation, and now you're 5 years at Compassion after 30 years or whatever, but here you are, and God is still using that moment of, I want to serve people, and yet you're able to do it in a very different context, but that same heart is still there.
Absolutely. And the lesson for me, Andy, is that actually God chose to use a man who was homeless, who had absolutely nothing, been on the streets for 25 years, to impact my life. And often, we can look down at the poor and the marginalized. We can ignore them. We know that through scripture, Jesus, spoke, and, with the heart to reach out. He often reached out to those that, the religious leaders were ignoring within that time. But I've found in my life that even with working with Compassion and having the opportunity to go out to the field, those that have nothing, are poor, are rich in so many other ways. And one of the things that I always find challenging when I go to the field is, I was just talking about this actually to a colleague yesterday. The scripture, the joy of the Lord is my strength. They epitomize that scripture. They have absolutely nothing, very, very little. And there's a significant difference between joy and happiness. That joy is deep, it's rooted in God, and they carry that. And it's amazing how God uses the poor to impact our lives, and the lessons that they can teach us. I think for us, it's not just us helping and serving them. It's a partnership. We come in as equal partners. There's a church leader in Uganda called Pastor Fred, who's one of our frontline church church leaders, and he says in a video that we come as equal partners. We're not coming in as like we know best. We're coming in saying, hey, we've got this resource, we've got this model of ministry that we've been doing for over 70 years. We know it works. And how can we stand alongside you and serve you and your people to impact and transform these children and their families' lives? And so we come in on an equal level. People within the countries that we work in, they're highly skilled, highly educated, knowledgeable. They understand their culture, their context, their communities. And so we just want to stand alongside them and use the resource that God's given us, particularly here within Compassion UK, through the generosity of Christians and churches, and really be great stewards of that finance to see impact and transformation take place within the countries that we work in.
And taking it back to your faith journey, then, where did faith begin for you? What's your background? I mean, was it walking along? Is it a Damascus Road experience like my wife would have, or was it more sort of mine, where I just thought, yeah, this church thing's all right, better carry on?
Well, when I was a kid, I was involved in the Scout Cubs and Scout movement, and so I was a Cub, and then I wanted to be in the Scouts, and the Scouts in the town that I was part of, they used to meet at the local Baptist church, and every so often, I think it was once or twice a year, the Scouts would get to take part in the morning church service. And I remember my particular role on this occasion was to stand up and announce the hymn. So it was back in the day where you kind of say, we're going to sing hymn number 328, The Lord's My Shepherd. It can be found on page, so and so. And so that was my role. And my mum came to support me. My mum and dad are great parents, and they support me all of my life. But my mum came to support me, and she really felt moved during the service. So she went back for the evening service, and that kind of began her faith journey. Really, she quickly responded to Christ and gave her life to the Lord and became a youth leader. And so I was about 13 at the time, and I started to go to the youth group. And I'd only been going a couple of months, and there was like a youth weekend going on. So I said, oh yeah, I'll go to that. And it was after that weekend, when I got home on the Sunday night, I was given, like, remember the Journey into Life little tracks that you used to get? It was one of those. I read it, I said the prayer, I rang my youth leader, I said, I've just asked Jesus into my life. And so that's where my faith journey began, really. And then my sister also came to faith, and my dad as well. So as a family, we came to faith in the mid-80s, really. And was involved in the youth group there. Then I got involved in the kids' work, and then became a youth leader. And I was involved in youth ministry for 20 years, along with my wife, Helen. And so been very active and very much part of local church for the last 30 odd years. And so that's where it all began, really.
We all have a story.
Yeah. And for me, I can look at it, and it's not like spectacular. It's not, a Damascus Road type of experience. But what I love is that God saves us, all equally and all the same. And, I didn't have to go through some challenges and some tough things that some people do, whether it's, alcohol or drug abuse or, whatever it is, and have some, some people have come from really, terrible circumstances and backgrounds, and God's stepped in and rescued them from that. I've had a very, a great upbringing, great childhood. My life in general has been easy in many ways, and very normal. But the grace of God, the love of God, and the transformational aspect of the gospel has been very real in my life. So yeah, I'm grateful for all that God's done, really, over the 53 years on the planet so far.
I love how you're talking about that kind of normal family. My parents were there. I went to church, but actually, I can also hear from what you're saying in your work with Compassion UK that enjoyment as a young person, as a youth, as a young adult, in that kind of, I suppose, a secure environment. Maybe one way of putting it. I can see your heart and passion into what you're doing, saying, I want others to have the same sort of opportunity, not to have the same opportunity because it's different, but that same steadying, secure kind of upbringing with education and family and employment, that I can see that passion into what you're doing with Compassion UK.
Yeah, and I find that the extraordinary, power, love, grace of God is very much wrapped up in the ordinary. Often, I think as Christians, we can look for those highlights and those mountaintop experiences. It's like, waiting for God to do something like, spectacular, when actually what Jesus really wants for us, he wants our hearts. He just wants that daily discipleship, to come and pray and read his word and allow him in it, often in the quiet, still place as well. I find that, that's where God works within our lives. And particularly when we go through challenging and tough times in our lives and seasons that are difficult and tough, that's where, if we allow God, he just brings that change into our lives and strengthens us and enables us to grow into the person that he wants us to be more Christ-like. And I find that it's very much that day-to-day almost rhythm, routine. That's where God is powerful and at work, is we just allow him to build into our lives a day at a time. And for sure there's sometimes where God moves and there's something incredible happens, but it's like, let's not just live for those moments and kind of just wait in between. It's like, let's just keep being diligent within our our faith, and even the questions that we may have. We haven't got all the answers to everything. I've got questions of why did that happen, and how about this and that and the other. But it's like, but that's what faith is. It's that hope that we have, and we're not meant to work it all out. If we knew everything, then we'd be God, wouldn't we? So I think it's about trusting God in the journey, in the process. And when difficult times come, a year ago yesterday actually was my dad's funeral. I lost my dad just over a year ago, and it was a devastating time. I was close to my dad. It's the first time I've experienced grief at that level. But even in the midst of all of that season, the loving kindness of God was incredible. And he was with us. He walked through and that season with us, and he's still with us now. And even with my mum and my family, they're tough times, but we've got the hope that my dad has gone on to eternity, he's in heaven. And even though we miss him deeply, and it can be tough on some days, God's with us in all of that as well. And so yeah, we're just deeply thankful for God's faithfulness and the way he strengthens us and sustains us in our lives.
Yeah, it's tough when those things come, but then when you have that knowledge and certainty of who Christ is, then that carries you through. And the happiness and joy you mentioned a while back, happiness, we all pursue happiness. We all want to be happy, and our kids to be happy, and to be happy in our jobs, but all that can come and go with illness and disease and death, and this happens. But that joy is everlasting, and it does sort of well up from within us. And as we know God, it comes out of us, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And I think, even last year when I was going through, and I knew my dad was, his life was coming towards the end here on earth, and I was, I thought, well, I've had 53 years with my dad. He was 79, and then I kind of think about other people and how they haven't had that opportunity. Some children lose their parents when they're young, and then I think about the context of the work that we're in, and there's over 5 million children under the age of 5 that die every year from preventable disease, and they lose their parents. And it's horrific, really, just the circumstances that they face within these communities of severe poverty. And that you kind of think about all those things, and it just brings perspective. And I think it's having that posture of gratitude, of being thankful for what we have. And I know that even in the context of the communities we work in, the countries we work in, so often the people that we meet and work with, they're grateful for what they have, and how God is just providing them in that just some of the basic fundamental things we need as human beings, really. And so, yeah.
How can we get involved with Compassion UK? You're talking about some of the projects. You talked about local churches getting involved and sponsoring a child, but just open that up for a little bit. That makes more sense for people who've never come across this. How could somebody like me in the UK sponsor a child the other side of the world that I don't meet? What's that all about? How does that work?
Okay, so if people are interested in find out more about us as an organisation, they can visit our website, which is www.compassionuk.org. And on the website, there's information about our ministry, our values, where we work. And there's an opportunity on the website to sponsor a child. It's quite an easy process to go through. they can just click on a child that they feel drawn towards and go through the process and sponsor. If a sponsorship's £32 a month, and that gives the child access to education, they become part of the Compassion project. Well, they actually already are part of the project, actually, but obviously the support, finances that into the future. They go to projects every Saturday at their local church. They're involved in recreational activities and are developed and get nutritional food, and have access to medical care as well. So, if they get diarrhea or malaria, they've got access to the medication that will prevent them from potentially dying as a child. So, I mean, it's a huge opportunity to engage and be part of a child's life to see transformation. So they can sponsor. If people think, well, £32 a month's too much for me, it's a bit of a stretch, there's an opportunity just to go online and donate. We've got like a shop where you can go and donate different amounts, and which will give money towards different parts of our ministry. And then for anyone that's listening that's involved in local church leadership, then again on the website there'll be some details there where you can connect and get someone like myself, one of our partnership managers, to just meet over coffee and have an informal conversation and see how that transpires and leads forward, and what partnership could look like for their local church. Often it starts with us being present at a church service, sharing about our work and giving people an opportunity within the congregation to sponsor a child. So yeah, visit the website, and there's opportunities on there to give and to sponsor and to maybe connect with the partnerships team and explore church partnership even on that level as well.
I love the idea that we can help people. We can't do everything, and none of us can do everything, but all of us can do something. And if everyone of us did something, what a world we'd have.
Yeah, definitely. We've even, I think with what we're doing, even with the interventions and different things, we've got business people that are engaging with us, that are sharing some of their wealth through our ministry to, whether it's to support a child survival unit, which, is working with vulnerable babies and mums, which probably costs about £12,000 a year, or maybe investing in some of the projects. We've got people that are giving on all different levels, but, like you say, we can all do something, and it's taking that which we have and sowing it in a way that can be used to bring transformation to these people and places and spaces. So yeah, the website's a great place to begin with that.
I don't think we can finish anywhere else better than really that we can all do something to bring transformation to somebody else. Just give us that one website just one more time so it's fresh in people's minds.
Yeah, it's www.compassionuk.org.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's been a privilege and a joy to learn about compassion. Yes, but I love people's stories, and I love people's stories into what they're doing, because I see so many people, and it's just that interweaving of moments that make no sense until we look back and think, how did that happen? And then we realize God's in our life and we see a transformation, which is what the work you're doing. So Paul, thank you so much for your time, work at Compassion UK, and for your time with me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Bless you.